Hello and welcome to Sri Lanka 99.94 Cricket Every Day. My name's Mark Machado from the Murray End, and I'm joined as always by Estelle Devon from the Paparay. Estelle is back from her adventures in Australia. Sri Lanka on 99.94 is your new home for Sri Lanka content. We'll be dropping into your podcast feed and on YouTube and the 99.94 app several times every week. So do please rate, review, and subscribe and tell all your friends that we're here. Thanks for joining Cricket's Conversation. Estelle, firstly, welcome back. How does it feel to be back in Sri Lanka after your Australian exploits? You must be really happy.
Well, I'm happy about certain things. Also, kind of wish I'd stayed a bit longer because that month just flew by. It was an incredible kind of opportunity for me. So, thankful for it. Thankful also to be back. A bit of TMI, thankful for bidet sprays in Sri Lanka. Uh, so, yeah, just thankful to be back. But yeah, I miss Australia a little bit.
Oh dear, oh dear. I'm sure the amount of cricket that's played, you'll be back there in no time. And before you know it, you'll be there half the year. Estelle, today we're talking about the IPL. We're talking about IPL retention. Last season was quite a good iteration of the IPL from a Sri Lankan perspective because we had 6 players there. I think broadly speaking, there was kind of a debate that sparks up in Sri Lanka every now and again about, we shouldn't let our best players go and play in IPL. They're trying to work out it gives a chance for some of the other batsmen around the world, particularly Indian batsmen, to figure out what our best bowlers are up to. And it gives everyone else a chance to have a look at our best batsmen. I think that argument is pretty much dead in the water, even though we know that Arjuna Ranatunga, Sri Lanka's World Cup winning former captain, does occasionally talk about that. But I think broadly speaking, I think most people are of the belief now in and around Sri Lankan cricket that playing in the IPL is a good thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when it comes to, figuring out bowlers or batsmen or whatever, it works both ways, right? So your best players are playing against some of the better players in the world. So they've got the opportunity to learn from them as well. So overall, I think generally there is definitely a kind of a more positive kind of turn of perspective on it now. I don't think you could say the same maybe about 5-6 years ago, but definitely now I think there's definitely a change of perspective where also I think people are understanding that this belatedly understanding that this is a profession for these players, right? I mean, that kind of money can change lives. So a lot more positive. I don't know if Arjuna Ranatunga's perspective has changed on it, but yeah.
Yeah, his perspective might not have changed, but I think it's important that you said it works both ways because I also think there's we'll talk about who's been retained and who's not been retained, but definitely for some of the players, you can see like quite vast improvements in the way they play cricket and the way they their thinking and tactics around the game. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of that has come from the coaches that SLC have provided for them, and they're just natural improvement anyway. But you have to wonder, going away and working with the best players in the world in a very ultra professional environment. I'm not saying that's Sri Lankan cricket don't provide a professional environment, but an equally professional at least environment, and working with different coaches can sometimes just give you a different train of thought and make you raise your game and that's why I, for one, I bang on about this on social media a lot. I think it's really important that we have as many players playing in the best leagues around the world as possible, and I think everyone should be behind it. Obviously, what do I know about cricket compared to Arjuna Ranatunga? He's entitled to his view. Estelle, should we go through the
Yep.
list? So last year, as I said, there were 6 players playing IPL. Let's talk about the players who've been retained. Hasaranga has been retained by RCB. I think this is quite an
Yeah.
obvious one. He had a really good tournament last year. It's interesting because he played in that. If you remember 2 seasons ago, so not last season, the season before that, the IPL, because of COVID, ended up being truncated into 2 parts. and he played in the second part of that, and he didn't do massively well, but he was still got, he still got back there. I thought you saw the improvement. I talk about players improving. I thought he's one of those players who probably improved the most, being around that kind of environment, and he made himself an integral part of at least the bowling lineup for RCB last season, right?
Yeah, I think, like you said, he didn't have the best of starts in his IPL career, but last season he was one of the key players for RCB, and obviously they're looking for a title win, and you can't, even if he didn't have such a great season, just seeing how what he's done over the last year, it would have been tough to kind of let him go, because you're always kind of aware of what could happen with him, because he's done so well with both bat and ball over the last season. I think one thing that he definitely want to kind of prove and um, catch their eyes with is his batting, because he's batting at 8-9 for RCB. I mean, if you watch the World Cup, you'll probably argue that's not a bad idea, but we know how good he is with the bat and what he can do with the bat. So he'd want to kind of move up in that, but he looks like a definite starter, doesn't he, in that RCB lineup?
Yeah, he looks like a starter. They came close last season. They'll want to build on that momentum last year. I can't see a huge amount of changes in their backroom staff as well. So I think it will largely be, they're not one of the teams that's released a huge amount of players as well. So I think it will largely be the last year's squad just having another crack at it. And I'm interested to see which players they bring in, to supplement the squad that they already have, actually, because they're pretty strong in all departments. Um, so let's see what happens with RCB. It's definitely going to be interesting. The next player being retained is Tikshana. This is obviously someone we've spoken about quite a lot recently. Again, he was signed up by Super Kings. It looks to me, I think he's playing in the UAE franchise when that starts as well. Um, it looks
Is
to
it the
me that
UAE
they're
one
gonna,
or the South African one?
or he's playing in one of their
Yeah,
other teams as well. So he's, which to me seems like that's a
yeah.
sign that he's probably quite important for their plans going forward. As you know, we talked about this in the previous episode where we took a deeper dive in his career. He's still so young, and there's still a lot more to come from him, right?
Yeah, I think he's one guy CSK in particular won't want to kind of, he seems like one of the long term kind of choices for them, particularly with the type of surfaces they play on at home. A lot of slow, low kind of tracks that are prepared there. He's ideal for kind of those kinds of tracks. And when you've got guys like Dhoni in the squad, right? From Tikshana's perspective, there's no better place for him to be. I don't think amongst the teams in the IPL there's a better team better suited for him, particularly with, like I said, like Dhoni, in that setup. You've got a lot of experienced players. You've got a team, or franchise that has won a lot of titles and knows how to win. So for him, I think it's a particularly good kind of franchise to be in. Of course, for them as well, he's a fantastic. I think a bargain for whatever price they paid for him last time, because he offers so much with the ball. We discussed it last week about just the kind of roles he's been able to fulfill for Sri Lanka in the T20 World Cup. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes in the IPL, what sort of role he's given, because we did see kind of, bowling in the power play, death, middle overs, everywhere, because Sri Lanka had so many issues with injuries. But I think he will have a more consistent and kind of settled role with CSK. So that'll be really interesting to see. Another guy who maybe we can see a bit more with the bat, I'm hoping. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I mean, Estelle, you're at the forefront of Dick Sharda as a all rounder campaign across all platforms here. So, I'm waiting for this to happen. I'm sure it's going to happen this could, it could happen in the next few weeks. It could happen in the next few months. But we know at some point, Tixana the all-rounder will appear. I think the other thing, if we're talking about Tixana and Hasaranga, is both the sides that they're at will know that they will be playing the IPL. There is no doubt about that this season. And the question really is, even if there was some bit of the sides that wanted to let go of him, it's, well, do you want to let an opposition team take
Yeah,
him?
exactly.
Because I just don't. I think at this point both of them are so hot that
Yeah,
you don't want that to happen, right? Because they all like Tixana, both of them pretty much guarantee you a wicket at this point in their careers, I'd say. And if they're not getting wickets, they're going for very few runs. They aren't playing Australia in Perth, so when India isn't going to have any of the problems he might have had there. They're they're absolutely brilliant, world class T20 bowling options. So I think that there's no doubt that they were going to be retained, because you don't want to let, for
yeah,
no other
yeah,
reason, you don't want to let the
absolutely.
opposition get hold of them. Shall we talk about Bharata Rajapaksa? So he's been retained by Punjab Kings. I was going into the announcements this week. I was a 50-50
Yeah.
about whether or not they'd keep him, only because I thought he had a really, really good IPL last season, but only because Punjab Kings stuck to form and kind of let go of a lot of
Hmm.
players, and I thought maybe he might be one of them. But they've retained him. I think firstly he had a really good season. I think secondly he's become a bit of a fan favorite because he just hits the ball around, and also I think because of his, he's got quite a friendly character. And thirdly, I think he's relatively cheap compared to other players in his position, right?
Yeah, I think that, like you, I was also unsure about Banuka, particularly because kind of Punjab Kings seem like a bit more volatile in terms of the changes they bring in every season. But you're right. I think it's again a case of, do you want to let go of him and then spend a much bigger amount of money to get someone who can play a similar type of role for you, or do you keep him and give him another go? So I think it's a good option that Punjab Kings have taken. I hope he gets to start most games. Like you said, he had a really good start to the season last time, but I believe when Basto came in, then he had to make way for him, and then when he came back, he didn't really have as much of an impact as he did when he started off. But just the type of player he is, I think, plays into their type of cricket. Punjab Kings is a very attacking side, particularly with the bat. So just the way he plays, I think, really goes with what they are trying to do as a franchise. So hopefully it'll be another good season for him, a better season than last time, because he didn't have a good World Cup. So I guess in some ways he has a bit to prove as well, because I mean, we spoke about it. He went into the World Cup saying that his goal was to be player of the tournament or highest run getter or whatever. So bit of a point to prove after a disappointing World Cup. So I hope he can do well. Punjab also one of the kind of the underdogs. So you always want to see those kinds of teams do well in the tournament as a whole.
Yeah, I thought last season he showed great character because he started so well in the IPL, and then the minute Johnny Bairstow arrived, he got dropped from the side, and I thought that was kind of unfair because I don't think you should ever drop form players. And he got himself back into the team, which was brilliant. Obviously, Johnny Bairstow, who had that accident playing golf and is currently he's got a broken leg. He'll probably, from the time frames that I see written about in England, Bairstow should be available for the IPL, but I imagine part of the thinking was, well, these are actually Barnacle is a natural replacement for Johnny if you're not going to play both of them. So, and we know Johnny's injured at the moment; it's a broken leg. It could be it could be an easy fix. He could come back exactly the same player, or there could be some complications in rehab. So let's keep hold of him. I think also, media have talked again extensively about Barnaker, and I think he is a confidence player. And I think the fact that he's got this nod will do him a world of good, and he deserves it. And again, we talked about the other two. I think he's one of those players. I mean, he's spoken publicly about going to the IPL and what the extra coaching and having a a specific coach for him has, how it's improved his game. And the thing that is most important about him is or that at least data people would say is most important about him is his strike rate, and he maintains quite a high strike rate even when he gets
Yeah.
out. Though obviously people in the comments will probably point to that England game, I know, but in general, he retains quite a high strike rate. The fourth retention was probably the one that I thought was most surprising, but only because he is yet to make an impact on the international stage. But he was absolutely sensational when he bowled for CSK last year. That's Matisha Patarana, the very young, Malinga-inspired seamer. Um, he felt it came, he got drafted in during the IPL, very late in the IPL. I believe he was there as a net bowler anyway.
Yeah.
CSK gave him a contract. He got a wicket on his first ball.
Yeah.
And I mean, you couldn't want a better start. I think everyone in and around Sri Lankan cricket knows that this kid's got the potential to be an absolute handful. And what's interesting to me is that CSK are obviously doing a lot of research on young Sri Lankan players. They've got Dick Sharda. They've got Dick Sharda when he barely played any international cricket. They've now got Patharada as well. The fact they've retained him at this age, again, feels to me like this is a nod for, this is somebody you want to have involved in the franchise going forward. I think it's exciting for Sri Lankan cricket. I know a lot of people seem to be quite frustrated or couldn't quite understand why he hasn't played more for Sri Lanka. I think he is still very raw. And I think it bodes well that, we've got players that are actually not very close to the national side, who are playing in the best leagues in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great opportunity for him, right? Just like you said, picked before he had even made his international debut. And then you have a team like a franchise like CSK, like I mentioned with Tikshana, like they've won championships, they know how to win, they've got a great, setup going. You have a team like that retain you, and that could do wonders for your confidence. I'm sure he probably was a little bit disappointed that he didn't get to play in the World Cup. Sri Lanka had so many injuries, but still he didn't get called up despite being part of like the Asia Cup squad. So he would have been disappointed. But I'm sure the fact that CSK of all teams has decided to retain him, I'm sure will give him a lot of confidence, because he didn't do much. I mean, he only got a handful of games last season, but whatever he's done has obviously impressed the management. And I think he's another bargain, right? Maybe he's not playing the entire season for you, but he can come in for a couple of games, and fulfill that kind of role as a death bowler or that kind of surprise package for your team. So I think it's a win-win for both the team, the franchise, and Pathirana. I hope that he gets more game time, like Bhanuka, that he does get more game time. But I don't think he should be too disappointed if he doesn't play the entire season, because just being in that setup itself will, I'm sure, help him a lot going forward, particularly with the World Cup, the 50-over World Cup coming up next year in India as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Shall we take a quick break and let's talk about the players who haven't been retained when we get back?
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
So Estelle, 2 Sri Lankan players haven't been retained. Let's talk about Chimera first. He wasn't retained by my team, Lucknow Super Giants. I was really surprised at this actually, and I suspect the main reason is his injury record. Essentially, since the IPL, um, he's been wrapped up in cotton wool, and it's not quite worked out for him. We know he had to leave the World Cup early. We know that he's had an operation, and I wonder if they just thought at this stage we don't want to take a risk and free up a spot. Uh, Chamir's played in 2 editions of the IPL now, and he's been quite very good in both of them, and he's improving. I suspect he'll get picked up in the draft next time round. On the proviso that he can kind of prove out his fitness. The draft is, I think, the 23rd of December, so almost a month and a few days afterwards. I've no update on his fitness beyond what I see on social media. So I think it might just be a case of can he prove out his fitness to prospective teams, and he may well even find himself back in luck now. Who knows?
Yeah, I was also really surprised, but like you said, it you have to kind of think it's to do with his injuries, right? Because you can't for a team like Lucknow Super Giants who are new to the IPL, they can't really afford to have just carry a player through a season without them having without them being able to take part. So I think that's probably the reason why they let him go. But again, it's an opportunity for him. Maybe he gets picked up by one of the bigger sides and gets to play a bigger role for whatever side he is picked in. I think he will get picked in the draft, but I mean, stranger things have happened, right? Like bigger players have missed out on opportunities. But I've seen a lot of like Australians pulling out of the IPL, so maybe that's an opportunity waiting for Chamira.
Yeah, because he's like a you could compare it to Pat Cummings. I don't know. I suppose Pat Cummings possibly gives you a bit more with the bat. There you go. And then Charmika Karunaratne has been released by KKR. I don't think this was a surprise. He wasn't involved in any of the fixtures last season. In fact, they let him go early to join up with I can't remember what Sri Lanka squad it was. I think it might have been the squad getting ready for the Australia series. He's not had a great 2021. Sorry, he had a great 2021. He hasn't had a great 2022 thus far. We know that he will not be in Sri Lanka's ODI squad for Afghanistan. Um, I haven't seen an actual official press release yet, but they did say in the media briefing for the LPL, because it came up in the questions, that he won't be involved. He's not been dropped for disciplinary reasons. They made that clear. I think he just needs to go away and find a little bit of form somewhere. Slash, also, but I do have some empathy for him because I think he's the one who's quite often asked to do the hard tasks. He has to bat with the tail enders, and he has to normally he ends up bowling where no one else wants to bowl, when we've totally run out of other options. And I suppose he's just not had a moment recently where he's totally excelled, and he's the first kind of victim, I suppose, of Sri Lanka's bad form at the World Cup. Though I'd kind of argue that maybe he wasn't the greatest form going into it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I also do feel a bit of sympathy towards him because I feel like in the past, not the World Cup per se, he didn't have a very good World Cup, and not many of the Sri Lankans did have good World Cups, right? But in the past, and we've spoken about this before, the stats don't necessarily kind of reflect how well he's done. Now, even him being dropped from the ODI squad, I've seen a lot of people on social media, on Twitter, discussing how his average in ODIs is this much, whatever, right? But that doesn't give you the full story. The truth is, in the past year, a lot of these little kind of periods of play where Sri Lanka have needed something to happen, he has kind of been one of the main players who made that happen. Like, get a crucial wicket, score a boundary at a crucial time. Maybe he finishes with 6 or 4, right? But he's hit a boundary when you've really needed it. Or he finishes with 1 wicket in his 10 overs, but he's taken a crucial wicket. So I do think with players like him in particular, who is not, you wouldn't call him a bowler or a batsman, right? He's definitely a bit of a bits and pieces kind of player, and I don't mean that like in a bad way, in a negative way. Um, he is a bit of a like a bits and pieces player, so it's difficult to kind of judge him on based on his batting average or bowling average. It's very, I think, contextual. You have to look at the types of situations he comes in. But coming back to the IPL, I don't think it was surprising at all. In fact, I think last year them picking him was a surprise. Um, but he didn't get to feature in any of the games. I'm sure it was a good experience for him. I think his bowling certainly did, like his pace improved after that kind of the month he spent with the KKR unit. So it's not a surprise that they've let him go. I am doubtful that he'll get an opportunity this time, particularly as he didn't feature at all last year, and he hasn't had the best of World Cups as well. But I think it's a good time for him to go back and kind of reset a little bit. He, like much of the many of the others, is also a bit of a confidence player, right? And you can see that once he didn't have didn't have good performances, you could see the shoulders kind of drop, and um, a little bit of doubt creeping in, I think, because these players are human too, right? They see what's going on social media, they see what people are talking about, and there's a lot of criticism. Weirdly enough, he's one of the first guys who gets kind of criticized, right, when Sri Lanka don't do well.
Yeah.
So it's the talent is obviously there. um, the ability is there, so I don't think there's any reason to doubt that. But maybe it's time to just go back, rethink things, rethink how he wants to go forward. Maybe look at focusing more on one of either the bowling or the batting, so that he can get into the side as a pure bowler or pure batter, and then kind of work on the other aspects. Because to me, I was a doubter at first. Like a year ago, if you had asked me about Chamika Karunaratne, my perspective would have been completely different. But I do think that he has a lot to offer Sri Lanka cricket in particular, and in T20 cricket in particular. So hopefully this time of cricket is a good kind of period for him to work a little bit more on himself.
And the other thing that can happen in cricket quite often is sometimes the best thing for your reputation can be not playing. Sometimes
The best players are on the bench,
right?
right? You've never been as
Yeah,
good as when
right.
you've been on the bench.
Exactly, right. Your reputation grows, and suddenly people realise what you're doing. I mean, some of the fielding I've seen from Sri Lanka sides in the very recent past has been so bad. I'd say you could almost justify having a specialist fielder, and he's one of our best fielders. So maybe keep him in the squad just for that. Let's take a quick break, Estelle. When we get back, let's have a look at which players we think could end up with IPL contracts after the next mini auction.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
So Estelle, there's all the IPL teams have put out their retention list. We know there's roughly about, I think, 30 spots for overseas players. That doesn't mean all 30 will be fulfilled, but it means that there's potential opportunity for a few more Sri Lankan players to be part of the tournament. I think the question, and I suspect almost all the Sri Lankan players will want to play in it. If they're not already there, I think the real question is which players do you think are most likely to fill those spots? The difficulty with these drafts is you never know what's going to happen at the draft itself. I mean, how many times do you follow these drafts and the players who are tipped to be the hot picks don't get selected? And also from a player's perspective, I think the frustration thing is that the clubs, the teams, sorry, are getting more savvy about how to use these drafts, and they understand there's no point collecting 8 of the best opening batsmen in the world. You have to have more balance in the side, and therefore, I mean, the 2 players I'd love to see play in the IPL will be Kissel Mendes and Nissanka. But actually, realistically, you look at it and you'd say India's, the depth of opening batting talent in India has never been higher. And actually, probably the hardest place to pick up a IPL contract is as an opening batter, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like you said, that's one of the biggest differences between franchise cricket and international cricket, right? Like teams are a lot more savvy on, and there's no kind of how do I say it, like this emotional kind of connection, right? Where, oh, he's done so well in this, we have to pick him. That emotion is removed from franchise cricket. So they don't see things how a national team would see things. So I mean, in Sri Lanka, we've had situations where we've had like 6 openers, right? I mean, you're trying to fit as many
Well,
openers.
currently there's basically our top 4
Yeah.
is 4 openers, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, in the IPL, like you said, and I also think in T20 cricket, opening the batting is the easiest position to be in. It's a lot tougher to come in beyond that, like at your 3, 4, 5, 6. I think even more than 5, 6, it's 3 and 4 that's tough because you're kind of caught trying to adjust to what happens in the first 6 overs and then, trying to set a foundation for the latter order as well. So the Kusal Mendes, I would think could be an option, but would be difficult to pick. For me, I think someone like Dilshan Madhusanka will be somebody who a lot of maybe the smaller teams will have their eye on because again he's kind of an unknown quantity and he's done well. Bowls quick, left arm bowler. You don't get too many of them, so I think he's one player who maybe a couple of teams will have their eyes on. But of course, he's out with injury, so we don't know whether that's gonna how long that's gonna keep him out for, and the details there. And the other one, and I think he was unlucky to kind of miss out last season, was Dasun Shanaka. I think he offers enough as a batter alone, not even as an all rounder, but as a batter alone, to get a contract at one of the teams. He didn't have the best of World Cups, but I think again he's the type of player who comes in a lot of difficult situations, and over the last year he's done a really superb job for Sri Lanka coming in at number 6. So maybe there's an opportunity for him. I think a lot of those teams in the IPL would benefit from having a player like him. I do think a lot of them still see him as more of a bowling all rounder, which is weird. I know he kind of rose to the spotlight because of his bowling, but he's always been more of a batter than a bowler. So maybe that's the reason why he didn't get picked last season as well. But I think he has a lot to offer in that lower middle order for whatever team in the IPL. I think all teams could benefit from having him.
I agree with on those 2. I also think the other 2 that teams might have a look at would be Laharu Kumara. I think potentially because there's not many players that come out the subcontinent who bowl at the kind of pace that he can, and as kind of consistently as he can as well. I wonder if one of the smaller teams might take a punt on
Yeah, and I think
him.
players like from Sri Lanka, they don't unless you're a Hasaranga, they don't tend to go at big price tags, right? So someone like Lahiru Kumar could be a real bargain, for one of like maybe the base price or whatever, if he does set the right kind of base price, because maybe he doesn't play the entire season for you, but he could be a really big impact player for some of those teams.
Yeah, exactly. And the other player, just because he's had quite a good 6 months, or not even 6 months, the last 3 months, and I think if he has a good LPL, which finishes, I think, 2 days before or the day before the draft starts, I think is Danajaya da Silva, because he's got that kind of bits and pieces about him. He can kind of do. Obviously, we know what it's best for him to open the batting, but I think just being a batting all rounder effectively is quite an effective. It's quite a strong hand to go into an auction like the IPL auction, and we know that he can get runs on pretty much any surface, and his bowling's pretty effective on almost any surface. Though I don't know, you know, we're still under. There's a lot of mystery why he doesn't often bowl his 4 overs out when he plays for the national side. But maybe for IPL side, he could represent great value in it. The other one player I would chuck in there, he's obviously one of my favourites and gets mentioned in this podcast way too much, is Walalage, just because, again, he's young and I think you get him cheap and you can groom, I see him as a kind of little Hasaranga. So you could potentially, groom him, get him in early, get him in cheap, and build a team around him for in the next few for 5-6 years time at least, depending on, I suppose, on when the next mega auction is. So I think we could end up in a situation, or we should end up with at least 6 players playing in the IPL. I think if Sri Lanka has a good auction, it could be as high as 9, but it'll probably be 6 or 7, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think 6 would be the number. I'm not entirely sold on the type of role the likes of like Dhananjay De Silva can play in an IPL team. Just because the surfaces tend to be more batting friendly, and like we spoke about, those opening spots or those top 3 spots are very difficult to get any space in, and I wonder if IPL teams are kind of moving away now from that type of play. You saw Kane Williamson getting released. I mean, how long's he been in the IPL, right? He's spent at least the last 5-6 years in the IPL. So maybe they're kind of moving away from that type of player who the anchor in the side. But I do think with the incredibly high amount of matches that players from England, Australia are playing, that them dropping out would give opportunities to a lot of Sri Lankans. So we did see like someone like Pat Cummins. So maybe Lahira Kumara is your replacement for Pat Cummins.
Rightfully so. I'd much rather have Kamara in my side than Pat Cummins. And you can quote me on that. Don't eye roll. Come on, this is Sri Lanka 99.94. Shall we leave it there so you can eye roll in peace the rest of the day, Estelle? Thank you for listening to Sri Lanka 99.94, where we speak cricket every day. Please do rate, review, and subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast. You can download the 99.94 app. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Mark Machado, and Estelle is at Estelle_Vasude1. Never miss out. Join our 24/7 conversation on social media and follow us. Well, across social media. You can follow the 99.94 DM, not just on Twitter. They're also on Facebook and on Instagram and on YouTube. Cricket every day, your way.